Hello, everybody. Today we are here with the Aliran office to discuss the latest happenings in West Asia. With me is Tong Veng Wye, who is a representative of the Palestine Solidarity in Penang. He's also an Aliran member, and I'm Anil Netto. So let me start by asking Veng Wye, what do you think is happening in West Asia now, and is there a linkage with what is going on in Gaza earlier? Because Gaza seems to have dropped out of the news headlines, and that all the focus is on Iran and the Gulf states. And people have even forgotten Venezuela, Cuba, and to a lesser extent, Ecuador. Over to you, Wing Wai.
Hi, Anil. Thanks for these few minutes here for the quick conversation. To some extent, you're right. Gaza is kind of off the center, and which is exactly why I'm wearing this. I go around wearing this badge here, Free Palestine, Stop the Genocide in Gaza. As far as what's happening in West Asia now, of course, the strikes and bombings of Iran, I think there's something that is deeply uncivilized and disgraceful about it. It's uncivilized because, on the one hand, as we know, negotiations and talking at the table were going on. And in the midst of those negotiations, which from what we hear were actually making progress through the communication from the mediators. In the midst of all that, what happens? Bombs come, rain down from the sky. There's devastation. And where do the bombs hit? They hit a school, killing more than 160 young schoolgirls, most of whom were between the ages of 7 to 12. So you talk on the one hand, and at the same time, the next instant, you go and bomb and kill and destroy. There's something that's deeply uncivilized about that, and that's not the first instance. The current strikes started on the 28th of February this year, and it was the same thing that happened last year in June 2025. Again, the Iranians, in spite of all the threats and contemptuous conduct that was presented to them by the US, personified in the very crude character of Trump, they were at the negotiating table. And yet again, at that time, June 2025, while talking, they get bombed, they get struck, missile attacks. This is a reprise of that kind of uncivilized behavior, and that's not even the end of it. In it was September 2025, it was Doha in Qatar that got struck by the Israelis. Again, it was negotiations that were going on, mediated by the Qataris. Hamas leaders were there. Again, they were bombed, killing people, killing the chief negotiator. So really, there's something really deeply uncivilized about a mode of behavior that goes to the lowest common denominator. It's LCD denominator. It's LCD behavior, lowest common denominator. You act beneath yourself. You go to the lowest form of conduct and behavior that you can, and that is what is governing the way things are.
You've talked about the historical legacy of imperialism and racism, and you tried to draw a comparison, a parallel with what's happening now. Could you elaborate on that a bit more?
Yeah, I think that there is a thread that runs through what is now happening, the exertion of dominance through technologized military violence in Iran. It is also the same thread that we saw in January, where there was intrusion into the airspace and territory of Venezuela. Again, helicopters, military people, they go and kill a few people, go and abduct the head of state. That kind of military supremacy, overwhelming military force is used. and it was also used under the threat of that. It is also used in combination with the imperial supremacy as expressed by sanctions and embargoes, the 6 decades of what's been going on in Cuba, and recently made worse by the fact that fuel has been strangulated from the supply to Cuba with all sorts of repercussions. So that kind of imperial dominance is also what has facilitated the past more than 100 years of the settler colonization of Palestine. It is the same thing that runs through, and that is what I think keeps Palestine really, in a sense, at the center. If one were to try and make sense of what is going on, there are so many theaters of conflict. For me, Palestine is something which encompasses all these things: dominance, hegemony, colonialism, empire, imperialism, underpinned by racism. All of it is there. And in that sense, I think that if we understand Palestine, the struggle in Palestine, the deprivations and the dispossession of the Palestinians, you will understand a lot of the other things that are happening.
You seem to be a bit of an anomaly in Malaysia because the majority of people who are concerned about what's happening in Palestine and to a certain extent Iran seem to be largely from the Malay Muslim community, but perhaps not so much reaction from, in terms of the public reaction, from the minorities in Malaysia. How did you get involved in this, and do you have any message for the minorities in Malaysia?
Yeah, it's true that I think by and large, the response from Malaysians has been mostly Malay Muslim based, and that's really pretty unfortunate because that's a projection of the sort of communal separations that we have onto an issue which probably a large segment of the non-Malay Muslim population in Malaysia sees as a Muslim issue very, very wrongly. And that is so wrong because it really, as we know, it has very little, if anything at all, to do with religion. It is a question of injustice. It is a question of historical injustice, a people who are deprived of their livelihood, refugees in their own land, genocided, as we saw in Gaza from October 2023. And really, the best of our traditions in Malaysia, regardless of which community we come from, the best of our traditions actually ask for us to be compassionate, to identify ourselves as part of the human family, and to have a sense of revulsion against gangsterism, bully, killing, and devastation, underpinned by domination and injustice. So really, the non-Muslims in Malaysia, they have to stop seeing this as through communal lenses.
And what do you think of the position of the Malaysian government in the present attack on Iran and the reactions, the extension towards the Gulf? Do you think Malaysia's position is a principled stand at the moment?
That's a somewhat difficult question given the time available that's left. I can understand. Well, in the first place, I think that whatever it is, there is appreciation. I respect, at least at the level of statements, public positions that are enunciated by the Malaysian government, including the Prime Minister. Words are important, and if those words describe a certain position that's against Zionism, against imperial domination, in support of the victims of settler colonialism, then that is important. At the same time, of course, people are aware, we are aware that there are realities that you have to navigate in the real world. And to that extent, do we do as well as what I would hope? I would certainly think that we can do much better. We signed contracts with AI companies from the US, for our major banks, our governments. We have contracts with arms suppliers that have dealings with the Zionist government of Israel, just as the AI companies that I mentioned earlier. They service the whole entire militarized killing machine by their AI resources and data centers, and yet we sign contracts with them.